This week on the Real Watch List Plus, we're still honoring the theme of LGBTQ films with the classic 1993 movie, Philadelphia.
So join us for the ride as we have a deep dive into this classic movie on the Real Watch List Plus.
When a promising lawyer in a large firm, played by Tom Hanks, is discovered to have HIV by his law firm and fired, he hires a homophobic ambulance-chasing attorney, played by Denzel Washington, who is the only willing advocate who will take his wrongful dismissive case.
So how do our costumes fit into today's movie theme?
This is a courtroom drama, pretty much. It ends up in being in a courtroom, and I have to say that I love courtroom dramas. I always have. So I am dressed as a judge today.
Well, I am dressed up as a bicycle rider because one of our sponsors for today is Breaking AIDS, an organization that raises money for HIV and AIDS programs for Housing Works in New York City. But I wanted to take the opportunity to wear this bike outfit to not only represent Breaking AIDS, the organization that is our sponsor today, but also the organization that they raise money for, Housing Works in New York City. Two great organizations that help raise money for HIV/AIDS prevention programs, education, advocacy. So I have my bike outfit, but I will say I can't see with my bike glasses.
Oh.
I can see if I was on a bicycle.
We always have this problem with glasses.
You have it, I have it. I just can't read a darn thing unless I have my reading glasses.
When we get very successful, we'll have eye surgery, so we don't need to wear glasses anymore.
I am with you 100%.
That's what we need.
I can't wait for that day.
Well, you want me to tell you a little bit about this picture? Should I go into it?
Yes.
To look at it again, Tom Hanks and Denzel are so young. And the story, Tom Hanks is an up-and-comer, hot-shot attorney in an old mothy law firm run by very conservative, big law firm.
Good description. Tom Hanks, who plays Andrew Beckett, he's the golden child of the firm.
The golden boy, totally.
They're ready to give him a high-profile case.
Yes.
And everyone in the firm, the higher-ups, love him.
Right.
But they find out something different
Right.
that make them change their attitudes towards Andrew 180 degrees.
But before that, before they know that he's exhibiting symptoms and lesions with HIV, and of course nobody knew about it then, he's in a hearing, and Denzel is there representing somebody else. He's a real ambulance chaser. He's always handing his cards out to people and saying, hey, did you get hurt? He sees somebody with a crutch. He goes, you need representation? So when this all happens, and they kind of sabotage Tom Hanks to fire him, Tom Hanks goes to 7 different law firms to try to get representation to help him, because he probably made a really great salary and he was a real comer and his job didn't suffer at all. And finally, he goes to visit Denzel, who's a very homophobic person. Right. He ends up representing him. Right. And it turns into a fantastic courtroom drama.
Andrew can't find any representation. He's ostracized, he's alone, and pretty much Joe Miller is his only hope at that point, because no one would take a case. And again, you're talking about 1993, AIDS epidemic is made known in the early 80s. Still not a lot people know about. Still people have this misconception that you can get it by being next to a person.
Breathing next to them. Yeah, right. Anything, touching them, right. Drinking from a glass.
And they don't know the difference between what HIV is and AIDS is. They have no idea what to expect when someone has the infection of AIDS. So add that to just being gay, and whether or not you're in the closet or out of the closet lends itself to an interesting dynamic. Not only are you suppressed as being a homosexual, add the layer of HIV/AIDS, and you're further squashed.
And also, Denzel plays Joe Miller. In investigating the little bit that he does in the inception of this, he sees the fishy business that the law firm did, and there was a very important document that Tom Hanks was supposed to present, and all of a sudden it's missing. And Tom Hanks was getting sick, and he called in a lot, and he was using excuses. So he really didn't tell the truth. But then they found out there was another case that was a precedent. And when they found out that another woman did have it, but they didn't let her go, it started a whole thing where Denzel wanted to uncover the duplicitous nature of this law firm because they were very dishonest. And as a lawyer who felt for the common man, he had to defend Tom Hanks.
One, two, three.
9.5.
That's a stretched 8.
You're stretched.
Stretched.
It's a great film. It really is. The performances are top notch in it. It propelled Bruce Springsteen into the Hollywood zone because he wrote the song Philadelphia.
When do you ever hear Springsteen perform Philadelphia?
I
Streets of
hear it
Philadelphia?
on Sirius Radio Deep Tracks.
I hardly hear it. You always hear other
It
more
still was a
common,
great,
popular
great
songs.
song.
So and I say stretch take because I was really torn. Watching the film, I had seen it before. And it's interesting because I don't remember seeing it from beginning to end. I would see pieces of it.
Really?
And I'm not sure why. I don't know if it was a
Maybe
subject
you didn't
matter
see it in the
or I got
movies
bored.
originally.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
No, it would
Well,
be like on
that's why.
HBO, Showtime. Very critical of how it was filmed, how it was portrayed, and then researching it, I started to feel differently. So that score is more of prior to my research and understanding why the film was made the way it was. Now, before this film, you really didn't have any film that was visible to the mainstream audience. This was very, in my opinion, very Lifetime movie.
You thought of it as a Lifetime movie, like Lifetime on TV?
Yes.
Are you kidding
Yes,
me?
because
oh my
they-
God, crazy thing.
In my view of it, it was very boxed. Okay, let's check off the boxes. Okay, so we have to have a scene in a hospital with a lot of people, overcrowding. Let's let people know that there's overcrowding. We have a boyfriend, but the boyfriend is played by Antonio Banderas.
Yes.
Which I love Antonio
Very
Banderas.
cute
and that's
back
not the
then,
first,
gorgeous.
And that's not the first gay role he played. He's straight, but he had experience of playing those roles before. I didn't feel the love between Andrew and Miguel.
No, well, the main characters, it was between the lawyer, and that was like the parallel.
Lifetime. That, again, I go back to Lifetime. I know, my husband and I argued about this film too, and I'm sure I'm gonna get some comments about this. You never see them kiss. There was one scene, Tom Hanks is in the hospital and Miguel runs. He's confronted by the doctor. He's asking a lot of questions. Why are you doing that? They wanted to do a colonoscopy. He said no. And the doctor snaps back, you're not a relative. I don't have to listen to you. You're nobody,
Right.
Which I understand that. It's very factual. But they purposely turn when Miguel goes to connect with Tom. You see the back of Tom's head, you see the front of Antonio Banderas, and they kind of kiss. I don't know if they kiss on the cheek, but it's hidden.
But
They get to the end scene, spoiler alert, your lover, your partner is dying, and you know it's going to happen. And I'm like, there was no
but
affection. I didn't feel it at
come on.
all.
Let me just stop you here. If you knew somebody was dying and they had AIDS, and you go back to the time period when this thing was supposed to be, would you could love them, but would you really want to kiss them because you could
If that's
get it
my
and
lo-
die?
if that's my lover, if that's
you
my
want to
partner?
die with them like Romeo and
No,
Juliet.
because Miguel was portrayed as someone who knew about the disease, not oblivious like the mainstream public was at that time. He knew he couldn't get it from a subtle kiss, but they did the movie in such a way, again, later researching it, because I'm finding all these like holes, like the check mark. Okay, I have a bad reaction to the AZT, and I'm not doing well, and Tom Hanks, Andrew, is trying to get treatment. Oh, what are we gonna do? Well, we're gonna have a party, because that's what gays do. When there's something bad that happens, we have to have a party, and a costume party to no boot.
yeah, well,
And then afterwards, we're gonna discuss the case. And I'm like, wait a minute, come on, guys, that's not real. That's Lifetime to me. It was so very compartmentalized, in my opinion, that I want to do this, I want to do that. And matter of fact, when you research, there were several scenes they pulled out because they were afraid on how the mainstream public would respond. Later, doing research, they admitted, even Tom Hanks said, you know what? If it was someone who was openly gay doing these roles, no one would watch. The studios wouldn't produce a film like that.
Right.
They had to pick a Tom Hanks
Yeah.
because everyone loved. Matter of fact, he was riding high. He was
yeah.
like the kind of like the all-American nice guy actor.
But you got to be kind to a picture because of that, because you got to remember when it did come out, when it was produced, the message Hollywood wanted to send, the things that were happening. And first of all, you didn't have a gay director. You had Jonathan Demme.
Right.
And
right.
another thing really interesting about Jonathan Demme, who did Silence of the Lambs, he's one director, just like his friend Jodie Foster. When they filmed, they always filmed in sequence. They never filmed like the last scene first or this, which is interesting. I always thought that's kind of cool to do.
Well, to Demi's credit, I liked his trademark in-your-face shots.
Yes,
That was something I'm like, ooh, okay. What a way to get a message across
right.
by
And
looking
it's been
directly at the
copied.
audience.
It's been copied. Paul Thomas Anderson, the other director, says that Demme was his idol, and all his close shots are due to that. He was his mentor.
I'm more intimate to the subject matter, so
Correct.
my lens is different
Of course.
from someone else that may be watching it. And again, watching it, then reviewing it and digging deeper and deeper, I'm like, oh, I'm glad they admitted they did these scenes in such a way, and maybe this is not the right word, like dumb it down,
Yeah,
so that we can get a message across
right,
to the general public.
right.
One other issue I had with the film, Joe Miller was an ambulance chaser. He was a homophobe. All of a sudden, there's a scene in the library where he sees from afar Andrew Beckett. They're researching, he's doing his own case. I mean, you really felt for the guy. He's because no one's representing him. Library clerk comes up, would you like to be somewhere else? Because I guess, you know, he's coughing.
Everybody was looking.
Right, like,
yeah.
oh my God, he's going to spread something. I didn't feel that was an epiphany for Joe Miller. Like,
That wasn't, but that wasn't the epiphany.
then what was?
The Maria Callas aria. When he was sitting there, no, it really was.
No, I agree with you. I
Because
didn't like that
he saw him
scene.
for the
I didn't like that scene.
Whether you liked it or not, that was the turning point, because he saw him for the first time as a person who had feelings, emotion, and value, and didn't look at the gay aspect. He looked at him as a friend and a person that he actually loved at the end.
Lifetime.
Yeah,
So this was actually based on some real life experiences, lawsuits that took place.
yes.
Which I was glad to learn that. There was a similar event in the lives of Jeffrey Bowers
Yeah.
and Clarence Kane. Bowers was an attorney who in '87 sued the law firm Baker McKenzie for wrongful dismissal in one of the first AIDS discrimination cases. Kane was an attorney for Hyatt Legal Services who was fired after his employee found out he had AIDS. He sued Hyatt in 1990 and won the case just before his death.
And that took 6 years, that case, in court.
Yeah.
6 years. And the same thing, I guess, I don't know, can we give a spoiler alert?
Warn them. Spoiler alert. Here
yeah,
it goes. Go,
I
Deb.
mean, and a lot of these cases are settled after the person has passed.
Passed.
Another really kind of interesting thing about this was the script went on 25 revisions before the script came out, and it was owned by Orion Pictures, and Orion declared bankruptcy.
Yep.
And it was really screwed up, and it was tied up until TriStar Films, that's one of my favorite logos with the horse, with the wings,
Horsefly.
came in, jumped in and took it over. And the subject matter back at the time, lots of protests, protesting people like crazy for this film.
Ron, who played the role of Bob Seidman, Orion could not get insurance because he had HIV.
Yes, that's right. I forgot about that, Joe.
The director was asked to replace him because they couldn't get coverage. He said, are you kidding me? If that is the message that we're sending, that we're going to have this film about
why are we gonna make
discrimination.
this
Why are we
movie?
discriminating
Well,
in this
that's
film?
Hollywood.
And then it was a year after the film came out in 1994 that he died of AIDS-related heart attack.
Yeah. Also, because we've kind of skirted over the cast, one of my favorite people's in is Jason Robards. He's the head of the law firm. He's always great. And Tom Hanks lost 30 pounds to be in this picture.
Right.
And I always wanted to do, and we talked about it over the phone this week about actors' transformations. So that's one of them. And I love when actors really go into a role so
Right.
that they become
Oh, no, he was
incredibly
well deserving
different.
of the Oscar for his role.
Right.
Springsteen's win as an Oscar,
Well, look at the songs that are out. I mean, even back then, they were better than now. I'm going to give you 8, okay, with a stretch, whatever that means, an 8 that looks big. But it really did change a lot of things. Just think of what it did for the public as far as perception. You should be thrilled with that.
I'm thrilled.
You're
I'm
thrilled?
that it was made.
You're thrilled.
I am 100% in a position where I would recommend it to someone. I'm in a relationship. My husband has HIV, and we publicly disclose that, so it's not anything that's hidden. So we're in a relationship where I'm negative, he's positive, and it works.
I'm kissing him all the time.
Yeah, right, exactly. But we have these discussions. We talk about when he found out that he had the HIV virus, and it was the early 90s, and he doesn't know where he got it. Now, his roommate at the time also was found positive. He doesn't believe that he got it from him. He later died. So I have this personal experience, and I guess maybe I want more. But to the general public, it works.
Another thing I want to say about the score, and I'm so into this thing with the score. Howard Shaw wrote the main music, and it's so, I got taught in a film class once, it says if you really hear the music, it's ineffective. And the music in this drives the action, even though it's subtle action, but it drives the film along from beginning to the end in a really beautiful way. It's a very understated score. So people, when you're learning about film and you want to watch Philadelphia, really listen to the music because it's very well done. And in modern films, oh my God, it's just crazy sometimes.
Let me touch on why we consider this a classic and what was going on at the time. As the film portrays, you had people being fired for no reason other than suspicion of HIV, whether they had it or not. If you were gay, you were fired because they just assumed that if you're gay, you're going to have HIV. In 1994, AIDS was the leading cause of death for Americans between 25 and 44. Interesting trivia. Included in the 1001 movies you must see before you die. Oh, at the costume party, and I didn't know this.
The military.
And I always remembered that scene. That's what
Yeah.
stuck in my head. And I'm like, why are they dressed up as 2 naval men?
Because
being homosexual in the
Right,
military,
back then.
you weren't allowed. It was
Right.
banned. You could not be.
The Dallas Buyers Club, 2013. Matthew McConaughey won an Oscar for it. He plays a homophobic cowboy, Ron Woodruff, who's diagnosed with AIDS and given 30 days to live. And Jared Leto is also in the film and won Best Supporting Actor. It's a really, and Matthew McConaughey loses weight, just like Tom Hanks in it too. That's an important film. Number 2, Boys Don't Cry, 1999. Hilary Swank won an Oscar again, and she played female-born Tina Brandon, who adopts a male identity. And Brandon Tina changes the name to be a guy and attempts to face life in prejudicial Nebraska to grim things that happen. Number 3, The Normal Heart, 2014. Starring Mark Ruffalo, Jim Parsons, and Matt Bomer. There they are, that team. The story about the onset of AIDS in New York City in the early 1980s, exposing the burgeoning epidemic and denial of the public. And number 4, different but wonderful, and Justice for All, 1979, with a great performance by Al Pacino as a lawyer who was forced to defend a judge who was duplicitous. And he's trying to find punishment for the guilty, which is the judge, while defending the innocent. And that's my watch list.
Do you know what butt butter is?
I think, but I'm not saying it. No.
Don't be afraid.
No, I am afraid.
I learned all about butt butter 10 years ago when I did a ride. Let me show you what butt butter is all about.
What would you? Oh my God.
And
Are
how
you
it fits.
serious? What
And
are
how
you
it fits
doing?
in today's movie review. Breaking AIDS Ride is an organization that raises money for HIV and AIDS programs for Housing Works New York City. As you can see, I'm wearing my biking shorts. And as you can see, they were generous enough to give us some t-shirts that help promote Breaking AIDS. Breaking AIDS raises about 200 some odd thousands of dollars every year for Housing Works. Housing Works is an organization that advocates for people with HIV AIDS, for housing, to get information about the disease, and to help people try to navigate through getting medications and the legal system.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So do people sponsor the bike riders? Is that how they get their money?
Yes, they actually do. So where Butt Butter comes in to play, my first ride was about 10 years ago. And part of Breaking AIDS, they train you on how to ride a bike. So I was trained about Butt Butter because these babies here, these bike shorts, can get very chafy when you're sitting on that bike seat. It's like Vaseline, but on your butt, more creamy, but it definitely helps you when you ride, in this case, 100 miles a day for 3 days. That was then. They made it a little bit easier now, and this year they're starting from Philadelphia, going to New York City, 2 days, and it's a great opportunity not only to meet people, but to also be an advocate for HIV/AIDS prevention programs. I highly recommend it. You're gonna feel like an advocate. You're gonna feel part of a team, part of a group of people that really care and wanna do some great things for people that are in need. Blake Strausser, who is the community organizer, the outreach person, I talked to her, we've known each other for a long time, and I asked, what kind of message do you want to get out to the general public here on the Real Watch List Plus? What she thinks is the most important things to talk about is that right now, they have all the tools to end the epidemic without a vaccine. On top of that, they have PrEP and PEP, which is something that someone who is negative can take to prevent them from getting the virus. She feels that if there's the political will and the funding and awareness, they can end the epidemic. She also mentioned that this year, there was a new podcast, season 3 of Blind Spot, called The Plague in the Shadows, broadcasted by New York City Studios on New York Public Radio, done by Kai Wright and Lizzie Ratner. It came out in January. These are the stories from the early days of AIDS and people who refuse to stay out of sight, which really gets into the history of inequality in treatments for women, minorities, poor people. Listen to the podcast. I encourage you to go listen to Blind Spot. It's season 3 on WNYC Studios. Giving a shout out to them, giving a shout out to breakingaids.org and to Housing Works. So folks, you can see a great movie in watching Philadelphia, regardless of what we say or think, it is something to watch. But you know what, be an advocate, be active, raise money, and put this epidemic into the history books as something we will hopefully never hear or see again.
So the reason I think everybody should watch, from my opinion, this film is, of course, we talked about why it's important. But also just to watch early. I love Denzel Washington, and to start the beginning of a career that has taken hold, and he's probably one of our greatest American actors. And Tom Hanks, when he was young, he came out of silliness on television and became a serious actor, and he's one of our American actors that's like the Jimmy Stewart of now. So that's why I think people should watch it.
Yeah, I agree people should watch it. I disagree in my opinion of how the movie was portrayed. I'm looking at it in a lens of 2024, in a period of my life where I want more realism, but I understand that in 1993, you had to create a film that, if you wanted to get a message across, you had to edit, cut, revise so that it could appeal to a wider range of people to hopefully get a message out of, in this case, the AIDS epidemic. So Deb, I enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, we had a good conversation about this film.
I think we both agree that people should watch this film.
Yeah.
We disagree on how the film was made,
Yeah.
but I think we both agree that discussion of the AIDS epidemic is something that people should know about, learn about. It's a continuous spectrum of an evolution of a crisis and a disease.
So goodbye tonight from the Real Watch List Plus and our LGBT film we did today. Till we see you next time. You never know where we're going till we go there.